Genesis 34 and Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 19 and 20, deals with a patriarch that we should often identify ourselves with, considering what this patriarch overcame, what he was faced with, and the generational curses that perpetuated themselves in his family. Let's just go over chapter 34 just so we can get a foundation of what is transpiring here. Chapter 34 reads, "And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. The sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved. And they were very wroth because he had wrought folly in Israel in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. And Hamor communed with them, saying, The soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give him to wife, and make ye marriages among us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get you possessions therein. And Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren, Let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me, I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give, according as ye shall say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully, and said, Because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that we are reproached, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this will we consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then will we give our daughter unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughters, and we will be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. And the young men deferred not to do the things, because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came unto the gate of the city and communed with the men of their city, saying, These men are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them to our daughters. Only herein will the men consent unto us, for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell among us. And Hamor and unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearken all that were out of the gate of the city. And every male was circumcised, and all that went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brother, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males, and slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came unto the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep and their oxen and their asses, and that which was in the city and that which was in the field, and all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. And Jacob said unto Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And they said, should he deal with our sister as with an harlot? It will get messy. Malik, that's the title. It will get messy. Here we see object lessons concerning the people of God and the heathen. Jacob has relocated his family amongst the heathen. His daughter decides she wants to commune with these heathens, have relationships. Do not think that Shechem's son saw Dinah and all of a sudden decided he was going to rape her. No. That's why we reference chapter 19 of Patriarchs and Prophets, because here it states she got a rapport with the people of the land. She got a rapport with the women of the land. That's how Shechem ended up seeing them. So the object lesson here, now we see we letting our daughters mingle with unbelievers. We letting our sons mingle with unbelievers. We even letting our sons and daughters date unbelievers. They don't hold the same standard we hold. But Jacob relaxed the standard. So he enabled his daughter to go out and start interacting with the people of the land. That's how this whole thing came about. We also see here in this chapter where Shechem and his son sought economic gain by being intertwined with Jacob and his household. Once again, this is a no-no. These things ought not be. These things are forbidden. God implores us not to go into business with unbelievers. Patriarchs and Prophets talks about Jacob had relaxed the standards so much in his household, but these things were generational. Okay, so we see the men here in the libraries talking about, the men here speaking about economic gain from being attached to Jacob and his people, the Shechemites. Here we see the king of the Shechemites. This young man has some kind of clout. He has some kind of authority. He has some kind of pull if he's willing to get the men to consent to being circumcised. Can I talk any of you to being circumcised? I mean, if I'm the mayor of Duluth, can I talk you into being circumcised? Just speaking to the men. Could I talk Leroy into being circumcised? Could I talk Pastor Smith, Pastor Williams into being circumcised? Marlene, look at Leroy. Sister Smith, look at Pastor Smith. Elka, look at Pastor Williams. Women, look your men in the eye. Sister Kilpatrick online, look at Brother Kilpatrick. I'm going to say a phrase. And look at the expression on your men's faces. You ready? Caught in the zipper. The face that your man just made is the memory of childhood flashing between in front of his face and the pain he dealt with. That's what the men of Shechem was going through. We talking about before opioids, Try and wrap that in your mind. Before morphine, Demerol, anything ending in an "ene," they were circumcised. And the Bible talks about how when the brothers who spent months in the field at a time found out about this defilement, they conspired amongst themselves. I got a sister. I got daughters. Heaven help you should something like this transpire. At least now, if Brother Mentee should just lose his mind and go get a weapon and assault you, they have drugs to ease your pain. Right? These men had nothing. I'm not going to diminish childbirth, but you ladies see what it is like dealing with that organ. The look on your men's face, you see how serious it is. And we only talking about dealing with a zipper. These men were dealing with circumcision without any painkillers. Simeon and Levi approached at the city gates. They saw them coming, and not a one of them could stand up to save his life. And if I was sitting right next to one of those men and Simeon came up and killed me, that man is watching Simeon kill a person right in front of him, and he can't even save his life. That's what the men of the city were dealing with. How did it get to this point? Why didn't Jacob rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and sit in ashes over his daughter being raped? Up until this point, coming across this, like the Bible is being layered, and you having to sift, and you have to go through all the precepts and all the lines and the lines. I kept wondering to myself, man, this is a wild story. These guys got circumcised. They agreed to go in league with these people, and they just up and killed all these guys. Oh, end of the story. No. This is a direct reflection of how we as Christians can let dysfunction come into the home. We see earlier in Genesis 30. Remember now, Dinah is Leah's daughter. Who was Leah? Leah was the other sister Jacob didn't particularly want. He wasn't necessarily fond of Leah. The way the Bible describes Leah, she was tender-eyed, meaning she was not good to look at. Don't ever let it be said, men are not visually oriented. Leah was part of the package in order to get Rachel. Remember what Laban did? He pulled okie doke on Jacob, right? He made Jacob agree to marry Rachel and then pulled the switcheroo on the wedding night. Jacob protests and he said, hey, no, come on, man. Take this one because the standard is, the tradition is the older one can't get married first. And in Jacob's mind, it's like, the oldest one is ugly. I don't want her. The Bible describes Rachel as beautiful, right? Men like what they see. And if one is tender-eyed and one is drop-dead gorgeous, who you think the guy gonna go to? Oftentimes, I wonder if Laban thought in his mind, if I don't make something happen for Leah, she might never get married. So Laban took these steps, and it was a package deal. And Leah was so much out of disfavor with Jacob that Rachel, being barren at the time, and this is God in his mercy has to see these things and say, I will balance that out if you will not balance it out. Made Rachel barren and made Leah fertile. Leah's son found mandrakes. If you don't know what a mandrake is used for fertility. It's a herb. And the bottom is described as having the shape of a human being. And it grows in the Mediterranean region. And when taken, it helps in fertility. So when Rachel found out one of Leah's sons had the mandrake, she propositioned, hey, look, you give me the mandrake, I'm gonna let my husband come to you tonight. That's how Dinah was conceived. I will deduce, Brother Mentee is not gonna speculate because I know y'all gonna hang me later on. This is deduction. Later on, we find out Jacob has a son by the woman he loves. How did Jacob treat that son? Like a king, right? So much so that those same brothers that were out in the field for months, when they find out how much Jacob loved that son, they conspired against that son. So would it be far-fetched to deduce the woman Jacob had a child with, the woman that he wasn't very fond of, he felt the same way about the offspring from the union? Is that far-fetched? We see here at the end of the chapter, Jacob was not willing to lift a finger in his daughter's defense. It took the brothers to say, "You gonna play our sister? You gonna clown our sister? You gonna treat her like a whore? Okay, no problem. We'll go along with whatever plan it is, but y'all got to get circumcised." Patriarchs and prophets talk about how Simeon and Levi conspired amongst themselves because they knew Jacob was not up for the task. That's not the child of the woman he loved. What happened when something happened to Joseph? Rent his clothes, sat in sackcloth, could not be consoled. You have to understand the time in which they're living in. In that stage of Earth's history, if you have a male child, that's worth a whole lot more than a female child. That's what's going against Dinah right now. And then she's the female child of a woman her daddy didn't have a thing to do with. So much so the man had to be bribed to lay with her mother. How you think Dinah felt? You see the dysfunction here. You have a daughter like that, and you treat your daughter like a second-class citizen. Are you surprised that your daughter will go out amongst the people of the land and start interacting with them? Start shaving her hair off, start getting tattoos, start getting earrings, start listening to secular music, start being promiscuous, and then get raped? And then the daddy be like, she's a second-class citizen in her own home. So now the brothers have to hold up her honor and let the men of the town know, hey, we're not going to have that. That's dysfunction in a household. That's imbalance in a household. Do we sometimes as parents do these things? One child treated this way, another child treated that way. Unfortunately, we live in a society now where some of us may go into the next union having already had baggage from a previous union. Are we going to be balanced? Are we going to be equal? Am I going to be able to say to my future wife, I'm not going to hold against her something from a prior union? I got kids from a prior union. Is my future wife going to be able to interact with my children in a reasonable manner? Because with this one, it's a multiple wife, it's polygamy. But let's bring that application to modern day standards. We often see now people on their second, third, heaven help them, fourth union. And they got a baggage. They got a lot of baggage. They got kids with that person, right? They got in-laws over here from this family. And there's an ebb and flow between all those family dynamics. This is what you're seeing here. Jacob's failure to intervene, failure to balance things out, and treating Dinah in such a way that she's pleasant to be around her daddy, that she feels wanted around her daddy. If Jacob had at least given Dinah some kind of nurturing, or at least made it to where family dynamics wise, Dinah felt loved. If he'd even did it for Leah, I can only imagine how Leah must have felt if she had to send a bribe in order to sleep with her own husband. Mind you, the husband she had first, even though it was through treacherous means, she was the oldest. And if we're talking about the standard of the day, the oldest was usually entitled to more. Amen? So now, because Jacob didn't hold up a certain standard, because he didn't show any kind of balance, his sons go and do these things. And the Patriarchs and Prophets talks about how God did not sanction these things, but he used it to his benefit. Because on both occasions now, you see the lack of balance, the lack of structure, and the believer allowing unbelievers or unbelieving union to creep into his house. When you read Patriarchs and Prophets, it talks about before this happened, Jacob had allowed his kids to start doing heathen things. They let heathen standards come into the house. They started wearing the jewelry. They started doing all the things that they knew they were not supposed to do. That's how he got to the point to where when his daughter was raped, he wasn't willing to lift a finger. And I had to ask myself, because up until this point, I thought it was all about these guys not being able to defend their lives after being circumcised. But the reality is whether or not I'm going to keep compounding dysfunctionality on top of dysfunctionality. Whether or not we as Christians will keep allowing this. This would not be the first time Jacob rehearsed such a thing. Let me remind you. Because he did an entire 180 when it came to his other, the son from Rachel. Gave the boy a coat full of colors, lifted him up above all his brethren, so much so when the brethren saw him, they disdained the boy. Even the brethren that came after. Remember now, these brethren killed a town. What's the population? 2 guys, right? 2 guys slew an entire population of people. So at this point, you think they're not thinking about, hey, we're going to get rid of this dreamer? In their mind, they killed before, they'll kill again, right? Jacob even mentioned these things on his deathbed when he's talking about these particular 2 boys of his. How gruesome they were, how ruthless they were, how heartless they were. At this point, he had to come to grips of just how much of a role he played in it. But it took some self-awareness, and it took another instance like that prior instance. It's to my firm belief, if Jacob had learned his lesson with Dinah, we're not talking about the issue with Joseph. He went to 2 entire extremes when it came to his parenting techniques and what he allowed in his house. He was so adamant about looking after the child of the wife that he loved, that he completely discounted the rest of these kids. We as Christians, especially us older Christians, we're going to have to deal with these things. Chris has 2 boys. Both of his boys are this far apart when it comes to their personalities. And Chris now has to do the balancing act. Marlene and Winston have 2 daughters. Both of them have to balance the ebbs and flows between their 2 children. Marge and Mark, 2 boys. Y'all know Enoch is not the same as Lemuel, right? They have to balance these ebbs and flows. Sister Tasha have to balance the ebbs and flows between each child. You have to do right by each of the child. The Bible talks about us not provoking these children's anger. That is what they're talking about. Jacob played a role in Leah going out to do these things because he relaxed the standard. And I had to ask myself, as a Christian with 2 daughters, what role did I play in the demise of my first union? Did I relax a standard? Did I discount one thing or another? And some of you know, talking to me individually, yeah, Brother Mentee did not live up to the standard. So now if I see my children out in the wild, can I hold the mother completely accountable if these children end up being heathens? No, because I played a role. Jacob tried to hold Simeon and Levi accountable without first looking at himself. Later on in life, yeah, he had that come to moment, but look what it took to transpire before he came up to the point to say, you know what, I've done some real bad parenting in my life. I can't imagine how Dinah felt in her own household. That some smooth talking, unbelieving boy could date her for a while and get her in a vulnerable position and then take advantage of her. And she go crying to her daddy and say, Daddy, this boy took advantage of me. And he shrug a shoulder. It's because you dressing like that, because there's music you listening to, because you keep going to the movies, because you wearing all that makeup on your face. Not a word of consolation. Whereas the boy that he had and he loved her mother, this man was inconsolable. You think the rest of the sons don't see this and be like, man, this dude he like Joseph more than he like us. You know what I'm saying? I ain't see him doing this crying when Dinah got messed up that time. Remember, we had to kill all them dudes because what they did to Dinah. Why he ain't act like that when Dinah got hurt? You think kids don't see this? You think kids don't see how you raise one sibling and how you enable one child, and then later on you wonder why they out here acting wild? Yeah, these are the dynamics. My sister and myself, we speak about these things. My father, he's in Liberia right now. And some of you heard this before, but about 5-6 years ago, I found out I had siblings. I thought it was just me and my sister from my mother and father's union. No, it's not. Turns out in the late 80s and early 90s, my dad was spreading his Liberian seed all over the west coast of Africa and in Maryland. So with social media, anybody with a Zoekago last name, it's unmistakable. I know we're related. And slowly, through social media, people start reaching out to me. You have the same last name as my daughter. I beg to ask the question, how old is your daughter? Oh, she's 12. Really? From my 77-year-old dad. That's interesting. He has a 20-year-old child in Maryland. I speak to this young man. He reminds me of a 20-year-old version of myself. He is upset that he has not had the nurturing that a man should have from his father. These dynamics play out when you have a dysfunctional family. He hates my dad. I hated my dad at 20 for the demise of my mother and his union. But with tools like the Bible, I'm able to now see how these dynamics come into play, how these things happen, how adults can raise kids and be so clueless as to what they're doing to the children. And when the children get into their adulthood, they wonder why the children are a menace. I see it. I have lived this. The Bible is true. This is what you can do to a child if you do not have balance when you are structuring that child. I beg this young man, come down here. If I'm the only family you have in the United States, come down here. I'll show you how to do things. I'll teach you the lessons a man is supposed to teach his son. And because I look so much like my dad, he refused. He don't want to hear it. He don't want me reaching out to him. The boy cut me off. I have more interaction with the brethren that are in Liberia than I have with the brother that's in the States. And I know it's a direct correlation of my father being absent from that boy's life. And now he had to learn the hard life lessons out there in the street. And I cringe when I think about what's going to happen to him. The blessing for me and my family is that I had a stepfather come along and teach me those lessons. But who did Dinah have? All Dinah had was her brothers. At least the brothers were sympathetic, whereas her father was not. Being one girl at a time like that, when you already have those strikes against you, your daddy didn't like your mama, and you a girl. What value are you? That's what Dinah's going through. My brother up there in Maryland, that's how he thinking. I'm the son from an illegitimate union, so much so my daddy can't even reach out to me from Liberia. I have to have a brother in Georgia reach out to me. Can you imagine how much he hates life? We do that to our children, brothers and sisters. My sister right now wants nothing to do with my dad because she had to grow up without her dad. And if I'm being honest, listening to a mother that has divorced a man because their union fell apart, can you imagine the brainwashing a mother could do to a daughter? Especially if she didn't get her way in the union. You think Leah and Dinah didn't have talks about Jacob? Come on, we're talking about family dynamics here, right? You think Leah and Dinah didn't have a discussion about their daddy? You think you think Dinah could not see they daddy favored Rachel more than Leah? What do you think that does to a child? Pushes them further and quicker out the door, right? You understand these things? I know we're talking about touchy subjects here, brothers and sisters, but these things apply to us because just like Jacob, many of us come from or are in currently dysfunctional households, a lot of which we played a primary role in the dysfunctionality. We perpetuated it, we incorporated it, we condoned it, and for some of us, we still doing it. That's the sad part about it. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 204, paragraph 2, please come with me. Patriarchs and Prophets. I want us all to take all this in. 204, paragraph number 2, it begins, the terror of Jacob. The terror of Jacob and his sons at Shechem ended in violence and bloodshed. The one daughter of the household had been brought to shame and sorrow. 2 brothers were involved in the guilt of murder. A whole city had been given to ruin and slaughter in retaliation for the lawless deeds of one rash youth. The beginning that led to the results so terrible was the act of Jacob's daughter, who went out to see the daughters of the land, thus venturing into association with the ungodly. He who seeks pleasure among those that fear not God is placing himself on Satan's grounds and inviting his temptation. The treacherous cruelty of Simeon and Levi, not unprovoked, yet in this course toward the Shechemites, they committed a grievous sin. They had carefully concealed from Jacob their intentions, and the tidings of their revenge filled him with horror. Heartsick at the deceit and violence of his sons, he only said, "Ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me. And I shall be destroyed, and my house, but the grief and abhorrence which he regarded their bloody deed is shown by the words in which nearly 50 years later he referred to it as he lay upon his deathbed in Egypt. Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly, mine honor. Be not thou united. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. Jacob felt that there was cause for deep humiliation. Cruelty and falsehood were manifested in the character of his sons. There were false gods in the camp, and idolatry had to some extent gained a foothold, even in his household. Should the Lord deal with them according to their deserts, would he not leave them to the vengeance of the surrounding nations? So the Lord still ended up working this thing out for the favor of his believers. Nobody came asking who killed all the people in this, who killed all the men in this town and took the women and children and took the spoil of the land. That's generally what happened in those times. That was the law. If you came upon a village or somewhere and you found people slaughtered and stuff like that, you start asking questions, you find out who the antagonists were, you gather a group to go after those people. None of that happened. If I told you 2 men killed all these men, and you not know the circumstances those men were killed under, you want to go mess with those 2 men? Remember, there's nobody there to tell the story. All they got is dead bodies. Everything else is taken. So by the time they find out Simeon and Levi, 2 of these shepherd's son, did all this damage, I'm good, hands off. Clearly they had some kind of beef or something was upsetting those guys that 2 of those men could kill every guy in that town. We don't know what Simeon or Levi's skill set were. We don't know how big they were. I have to imagine there were men of war in the town. And that's the unfortunate circumstances when we start intermingling with unbelievers. The men of Shechem thought they were getting into economic gains by dealing with the family of Jacob. That's how the boy and his dad described it to these men. If we give our son to their daughter, and in turn later on they'll give their daughters to our son, or vice versa, they got sheep, they got cattle, they're prosperous. We got access to all that, right? How'd that work out for them? How did that work out for the unbeliever getting intertwined with the believer? I'm going to close, but I want to say this as I close, brothers and sisters. Do not let it be when we are on our deathbed and we have our entire life flash before us, before we see just how much of an injustice we have done to a family member, how much injustice we have done to a loved one, how much injustice we have done to a child, as we see that child slowly go off into the world and we keep asking ourselves, how did this happen? How could I have where did I go wrong? Don't let it be on your deathbed before you rehearse all of these events in life and say to yourself, I could have did this better. I could have been more balanced. I could have got rid of the idols in my household and the dysfunctionality and been a more balanced parent, a more balanced spouse, a more balanced Christian. Amen.